Wonderful theme, Waves of Possibilities, Women in Leadership. And I'm really delighted to moderate this panel of three really accomplished women whose bios are in the programs. So I think, should we just start the conversation? And I think it's an extension of some of our lunchtime conversations too. So what I thought we could do is in a shorter time frame, maybe about 7 minutes each, could the three of you share how you got to where you are right now, and whether that was a very intentional path, like Natasha shared about, going to Northeastern and knowing that she wanted to come back to Northeastern, or maybe it's a winding labyrinth. I think that's part of the beauty of women's stories, is that we have a panoply of stories among us, and that we all can learn from each other. So, Jody, would you like to start?
Sure.
Okay, great.
And most of you that know me know I can't answer anything in 5 minutes, so I'll do my very best. I'm one of those that took kind of a winding path to end up where I am. I'm a local girl, grew up and still live in Yelm, Washington, not too far from here. I had a passion for writing as a youngster, and my undergraduate degree is actually in journalism and political science. But I knew I couldn't be one of those really, excuse my language, hard-ass reporters and make people cry and stuff. It just wasn't my, I just wasn't able to do that. But I still had a passion for writing, and I had a passion for government. So I wanted to see how that might turn out. I attended Pacific Lutheran University, got my bachelor's degree in journalism. And I ended up with an internship, which is awesome, with the Pierce County Executive's Office. So I started in that office doing public affairs for the county, and I was one of those interns that just would not go away. And I ended up staying in that office for 11 years, working my way up in the communications office. During that time, these floods would happen. And I'd wander down the stairs into the basement of the county city building, and I would visit this room called an emergency operations center. And so when the bad stuff would happen, I would wander down to this mystery room in the basement, and I would take care of media relations. So I'd talk to the reporters, I'd get press releases out, let them know what was going on in the disaster world. Well, I didn't think much of it. I didn't know what emergency management really was. I thought it was kind of cool. I was kind of a closet science junkie, all-around geeky kind of person when it came to the sciences. So I definitely had an interest there, but I never thought about pursuing it as a career. After numerous years of working in the county executive's office, and I loved great job. Got to do PR, public affairs, graphic design, nice, quiet little job. And then we were having a change in administration, and the emergency management director, who I knew, and many of you knew him, Steve Bailey, he took me to lunch one day. That changed my life right there. And he said, "Have I got a deal for you?" And he said, "I want you to come on board, still do your media relations work, but why don't you think about taking over public education for me?" And I thought, well, this might be kind of cool. And I was at a point in my career where it was time to be uncomfortable. And that's one of my themes today. It's embrace being uncomfortable. Awesome things can happen. So I decided to make that change, and the year was 2001. 2 weeks after I started in emergency management, we shut down the freeway because explosives were found in a locker. So all day long, we shut down I-5 in the middle of Tacoma. That was fun. 2 weeks after that, a little thing called the Nisqually earthquake happened. Okay, another little dose of lots of bad stuff happening at once. As the year progressed, that May, 70 of us had gone back to Emmitsburg, Maryland, to a FEMA training facility and did this week-long exercise on a volcanic incident. Well, I'll be damned if we didn't get home and something happened 2 weeks later. And we had a very small lahar coming off the southern flank of Mount Rainier, and disaster Jim Foreman from Channel 5 News was waiting at Harborview for all of the casualties, which was a lot of fun. And of course, everything bad happens between 10 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock in the morning. Every emergency manager goes, yes, they do. So we had that little incident, and then something called 9/11 happened in September, and then that November we had flooding. By that time, I was done with this career. I wanted out of emergency management and back to my nice, quiet little job in the county executive's office. I actually was given a polo shirt that said Disaster Girl on the back because so much, it had been quiet until I came on board, and then everything went completely crazy. But I found my passion. I loved this line of work. And Steve Bailey saw something in me that I didn't know I had, and he invested 15 years in developing me as an emergency manager. Again, it was being uncomfortable. It was taking on public education. Then it was training. Then it was exercise. Then it was planning. Then it was mitigation. It's, oh, once you run a radio communication shop, let's have you run one of FEMA's urban search and rescue teams. Let's have you take over the 911 program. So eventually I worked my way up to a program manager level. And then I was at a crossroads, and there was a unique opportunity with the Naval Postgraduate School. Many of you are familiar with the master's degree program. Very elite university, and it is fully scholarshiped. And it is, the application process alone is mind-boggling and very intimidating. But I took my boss's advice to go and get my master's degree in Homeland Defense and Security, because we were at a point at that time in emergency management, it was far more dominated by men. And when you are competing for advanced positions with folks who used to wear badges, as women in the discipline, we need to arm ourselves with as many applicable credentials as we can. And knowing I wanted to advance in this career, it was time to make that investment in getting my master's degree. One of the best things I've done, I will tell you, it was absolute hell for 18 months, because in the middle of a master's program with a thesis requirement, I had a presidentially declared flood in the middle of that, and you couldn't take time off from anything in that whole cycle, but it was well worth it. Eventually, I became the deputy director with Pierce County. Then I had another opportunity to get uncomfortable. I had worked in local government for 24 years. I always tell people I started when I was 10, everybody. Just kidding. Obviously not.
10 and a half, actually.
Yeah, 10 and a half.
10 and a half. Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Going through the master's program, I had an opportunity to do a fellowship at FEMA headquarters. So I thought, I'll throw my hat in the ring, and I was blessed enough to be chosen. I packed up and moved to Washington, D.C. for a year, worked with FEMA, with brilliant people. I always say they're 25-year-old PhDs who are smarter than I ever thought of being, but had never responded to anything in their lives, which was fascinating to me and drove me a little crazy. So working in the policy world was fascinating, but I couldn't wait to get back and work locally. And I always say do real work. But I very much value my time in DC. I think it's made me a better emergency manager. I think it's made me a better kind of administrator for my office. And then I always say I kind of showed up on the doorstep of King County when I got back, and they took me in. And I think we are very blessed. I'm the deputy director there now, and I work with the smartest bunch of people I have ever seen, and those who came before me who helped build a program that is outstanding. I'm always in awe of this team, and it's all women. We have an office where King County Emergency Management is 18 people strong, and there's 5 men. And I think this is a trend of what I'm seeing in emergency management, especially in King County and Washington State. There are numerous women in leadership positions. In fact, I think if I went through and did the data, I think the women in director positions in King County alone far exceed the number of men. So I think that says a lot about women in our discipline. We'll talk more about trends in a little bit, but that is the winding road that got me here today. I'm the past president of your Washington State Emergency Management Association. It's always fun to say you're a has-been. They're pushing me out the door.
Wow, if she's a has-been, then yeah, like that.
But it's awesome. I truly love this discipline. I'm so thankful that someone saw in me something I didn't know was there and took that time to invest in me. And it's been a tremendous journey.
And she still is on that journey.
I am.
Yes.
For 8 more years, and I'm retired. Just saying. My time is limited.
Okay, you heard it here first. So ladies, and and we do have some, but ladies, if you're looking for a mentor for career advancement, this may be your gal. So I spent last night thinking about the questions that Erica posed for our panel, and of course this first question about what was my route? Was my route very well thought out, and I knew exactly what I wanted to be and do, etc. And or was it a pathway, and was it circuitous? And it's interesting. I'm going to set the stage a little bit because I am. There may be some other elders in the room with me, but I probably am one of the oldest of the elders. I have been working, and I counted, it didn't take long to figure it out. I started working when I was 16. And of course, I'm now 51 years later, 67 years old, and incredibly proud of the fact that I am still a lifelong learner. I am still on my path, and it's sometimes a circuitous path, as those who know me know, and sometimes it's been very determined and specific. But I do have to share with you, in high school, I started out because I am dyslexic. And so I almost flunked 3rd and 4th grade because I couldn't read, and I couldn't sound out words, and I'd spell, and a lot of things. And so I always, as a kid, felt dumb, even though I knew that I'm really, really practical, and I have I always have had that. Well, I really got good common sense, and of course I now know that common sense is not common. Boy, do we know that in this business. So I had to really think about, I wanted to go to college. My mom, who I'm going to talk about also in a little while, was my first coach and mentor. And she said, Linda, I want you. And so my parents were in their 30s when they had my brother and I. So she came out of the Depression era. And she worked, she was at home, but she really wanted her daughter and her son to go on, as we've talked earlier, about getting a good education. And so she said, I don't care if you learn how to cook. I don't care if you know how to clean a house. It's just irrelevant. You hit the books. I want to make sure that you can be educated, get a good job. And so I went, okay, fine. And because I had to work really, really, really hard to hit the books because of my reading challenge, I also decided, well, I better do a backup here. I want to go on to college, so I took college prep courses, but I also took secretarial courses. So one thing that I will share with you out of that was that I think that having taken those secretarial courses, I still take shorthand, guys. This has served me well over the years. I can get verbatim sometimes, if I need to, every word that you say. And it is, but it taught me organizational skills and system skills, and how to set goals and have to accomplish them. But it was it was like my mother would always say to me, and I may write a book about this sometime, don't worry, daughter, you can always be a secretary. So her goal for me, folks, was, in her perspective, she was a Rosie the Riveter. So she was already breaking molds in her lifetime as well. But for me, it was like, well, if you can be an executive secretary working for someone, a man, then that is the epitome of you've really reached the top. And I said, well, okay, I'll do the secretarial, but I also want to do my college prep, which was fine because I did go on to college. I have a bachelor's degree, and I know I have a couple of Evergreen State College folks out there with me. I was in the first 4-year graduating class at Evergreen State College, and I went to Whitworth and got my master's in behavioral science at Whitworth. And I actually am now, and I have started the process of going to law school online. So people have said, boy, you're nuts. Why would you be doing that at 67 years old? And I had one man say to me, you're too old. Why would you do that? He still is alive, but barely. So, and I have had, I've worked in multiple areas, you name it. People kid me because they go, what haven't you done? Because I've been a janitor. I mean, I've been a director. I've been a deputy director of an agency. I've been an ambassador to Indonesia for a governor. I mean, I've done just a variety of crazy things. And some of it was well thought out and intentional. I went into the mental health business. I love helping people. Most of you who know me know that is who I am. I love people. I want to help people. I want to help myself to do better and succeed. So a lot of my work has been in the helping professions, and I've been in the environmental profession. But the bottom line for me is my brother, when I was in junior high school, gave me a T-shirt that actually still kind of fits. That says, it's red, and it has big white letters that says, "Here comes trouble." I've always been an advocate. I've always been a norm buster. I never, ever I just absolutely won't let people bully me or bully other people. And I've looked and always challenged myself to do absolutely the best I could, even though I'm an average intelligence person. But I am very, very tenacious and focused when I need to be. So that's kind of setting the stage for the rest of my story, which will evolve as we talk today.
Do I need to lean forward? I'm Jacqueline Lavalin, and I am currently working as an intelligence analyst with the Washington Army National Guard. To tell the story, I kind of have to go, I guess, back to my childhood. My parents, it was always a foregone conclusion I was going to go to college. I don't know why, because my mom was the only one that had. She was an elementary school teacher, but I guess I let my parents say, "Oh, you're going to do this. You're going to be a lawyer. You're going to, okay, that sounds cool." You know, I was the student. I love the whole academic environment too. So when I hear you talk about being a lifelong learner, that's so me. My husband sees it in me too, and he wants me to go back into academia. But I didn't really have any direction. So my parents didn't really know how to mentor me in that sense or connect me with people that could help me figure out the path. But, you know, I graduated at the top of my high school class. I had a full scholarship to State University, so I went to Arizona State, and I graduated the same time you did. So I was listening to you with great interest because it seemed like you had a very direct, you knew where you were going. And I started, and I thought about doing journalism because I was a newspaper in high school, but I didn't really know. But the whole time I had started studying language in high school, and I really enjoyed studying French. So while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do and taking classes that I enjoyed, the whole time language was there. So I was doing French and met some Israelis, studied Hebrew. We had Hebrew. I was interested in doing Arabic, but we didn't have it at a major state university at that time, Arizona State. Did a little Spanish to piggyback on the French, and thought about doing history, took a few classes in history, psychology, didn't know where to go with it. And in the end, it was like, I have to make a decision. I need to graduate. I need to pick a major. And so I decided to go with French because I didn't want to give it up after all those years. So I did that, and it was a little anticlimactic. It's like, okay, now what am I going to do? I wanted to go to grad school, but I was maxed out on my student loans because even though I had a 4-year scholarship, I stayed in school for 6 years and worked and did different things. So when I came out, I just needed to find a job and work. So I went to work for a small commercial real estate company in Scottsdale, and it was a great place to work. I guess now thinking about it, just as I'm speaking, my first boss, the CEO there, was kind of my first mentor. And he helped me I got a real estate license just mainly so that I could work in the property management side of the business. But I wanted to do more, and I wasn't sure exactly what, and I was kind of interested in the accounting side. I hadn't taken any business classes, so I went to work for an accounting firm, and they were like, this is great. You know, you can start out as an administrative assistant. Well, you can go do classes to get a certificate in accountancy, sit for the CPA exam. I said, great, so I started doing that. But it wasn't really me at all. It was really far away from, I guess, what was interesting to me. And then 9/11 happened, and that was kind of the catalyst that changed everything for me. I don't know. I called the Air Force. The Air Force doesn't call people back. It took the Air Force 2 months to call me back after 9/11. I had just signed my contract with the Army. Thought I went in thinking I wanted to do commissioned officer side because I had a college degree, but it ended up actually being a better plan for me to go in as enlisted because I had these jobs I could choose from where I could go to the Defense Language Institute and learn Arabic finally. So I was still enrolled in school, so I finished up that semester, and then I left in January of 2002 to go to basic training and had to go to my follow-on intel training, and from there went to the Defense Language Institute. And during this whole process, I met my now husband, and we kind of had the same training path, and we're going to the same places, so that worked out really well. And we're both active duty, and our first assignment got there in 2004, and our unit was already deployed, so we went to Iraq. So I got to put my language into action right away, so that was pretty actually fortuitous, and came back, and it was getting to be that time for re-enlistment, and my husband wanted to learn Chinese. He'd been in Arabic with me, but he never wanted to learn Arabic, so we had the option at that time. It was like they needed people. They were giving us the moon just to stay in and do another go-around. So I wanted to go back and get deeper into Arabic because they had more advanced level classes at the Defense Language Institute. I don't know if any of you know where that. It's in Monterey, California. It's a beautiful, wonderful place to live and get married and all that. Yeah. So yeah, I heard you say it. When were you there?
2008.
Okay. So that was kind of after my second trip. I went back there in mid-2006 and was there until 2007 for Farsi because the Army in its infinite wisdom said, no, you score too high on the test. You don't need to go to school anymore for Arabic, which makes no sense. But I had actually, in making that decision to go learn Farsi, there had been a senior warrant officer, female, who had been an instructor at DLI who convinced me that Farsi was the right choice. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to get to know her and have her kind of direct me in that way. Because it was mind-numbing to try to learn a second language and cram all this stuff in my brain. But, it has its ups and its downs, but I'm glad I did both. I'm kind of like jack of all trades, master of none a little bit sometimes. But from there, we were sent to Washington. We came up here to a unit here and deployed to Afghanistan. And while we were on that deployment, we were kind of both getting older because I joined the Army really late. I was 28 when I came in. So we're like, we want to start a family. We've been married for a while. And it never made sense to us to try to do the active duty thing and both possibly be able to be deployed because both times we deployed, we were deployed together. So we would be gone at the same time. So we decided that we were going to get out. We both got out at the same time and that was right after the recession, so it was interesting. But to kind of transition, to make it, we thought, easier to go back to being regular people, we decided to try out the reserve and the guard for just a year. He was going to do reserve, I was going to do guard. That way we'd be kind of on different schedules so that if deployments came up, at least it wouldn't be the same time, and we could look at starting a family and all that. So in that sense, that part of it was intentional, the family planning, waiting part. And I did. But I came into the guard thinking I was just going to be doing it part-time, and I was getting frustrated with the job search. The world changed a lot from like 2000, the last time I looked for a job and sent paper things and fax stuff, to 2010 when it was like a completely different, like everything's digital and, you know, computer databases are looking at your stuff, trying to decide whether or not a person even gets to look at it. But I met some amazing people when I came into the Guard right away, and people that were kind of gatekeepers, people that knew about jobs within the Guard and like opportunities to actually do more with my Army intelligence experience than I ever could do on active duty. I did take a kind of more of an administrative position, full-time active Guard reserve, and that was good because it helped me learn about the ways in which the Guard was different from the Army, mainly money and how all the money works, because it's a lot different. But while I was there, I met people that I work with now, people that I looked up to a lot that got me into the programs that I'm working for now, where I'm actually doing like an operational mission. I'm not just doing the admin stuff, which is important, but it wasn't the part that was interesting to me, and it didn't let me use my language skills like I get to do every day now. So I have like 5 years left, and I'm not a super ambitious person. I just want to be happy with what I'm doing. Like I don't know what the future looks like because I have 5 years left, and then it's going to be like figuring out what's next because I really don't know. So I just want to do something that is interesting and contributes, and go back to school for sure, use my post 9/11 GI Bill to get a master's, and that's kind of where I'm going. So
Thank you. So I wrote down some keywords that I heard from all three of you, which are curiosity and passion. You found your passion. You followed your passion with French. Linda has many passions. The tenacity, right? In different ways, you all have fought to be where you are. And this idea, someone once told me, he was a poet, of course, who said, the key is to listen to your life. And I hear that in all your stories of you listening to your life and the people around you. So next, could you each go through again and respond a little more deeply to this question of mentorship and who's mentored you and who you're mentoring? Or, you know, maybe you don't see it that way. As you were saying, you even just now in articulating thought about that. Mm-hmm. So let's start with you.
Okay. Yeah, so no formal experience with mentorship. However, I think that the way the Army structures its leadership development when done properly actually does this. A lot of times it goes haywire and people don't follow it because for a myriad of reasons, there's not enough time. We have all these other things that we have to do. So maybe counseling and coaching and all the paperwork that goes with that gets put to the side. But when it's done correctly and intentionally, it looks like what I was reading. As far as what the process is supposed to look like. Academically, like I said, at the university, I think I was like one person lost in the sea of people at this huge school and didn't really know where to go or who to ask for mentorship. And I don't think it was something that the school, now looking back on it, maybe set up very well to help people do. But definitely within the Army, I've had those people, those key people that have come up at different points, even if it was just like when I went to right after basic training and I went to Arizona for my occupational training, and I went to my drill sergeant. I said, I don't think I can do this. This isn't cut out for me. I can't be, confrontational. I can't do these things. Yes, you can. Get out of here. Go back. And always just going back, and just even if it was just a little encouragement or direction, and then making it through the language school. Even just listening to the stories from the instructors, they have so much to offer just from their experience, even if it's such a completely different point of view that it might sound crazy on one aspect, but those instructors, their stories as immigrants and everything, that was really impactful for me. And then just different leaders, like there's this kind of a saying in the Army that sometimes you learn more from the people that you don't want to be like than the ones that you do, but there are definitely those goalposts, those people that I look back on and that I still think about every day, and I wonder what they're doing. And some of them I've tried to reach out to and I don't get any response back, and I'm a little disappointed. And then other ones, they're still there. And in the Guard, they're definitely there because the Guard's more like a family than the active duty Army, in the sense of we're not going anywhere. Like, we're actually we did make a deliberate decision to stay in Washington and to kind of station ourselves here. And the people that are here in general in the Guard, they're the same way. And a lot of them actually grew up here and have never left Washington. But we don't have that same turnover, you know, so it's easier to maintain contact with those people. But the people that saw things in me that I didn't even see that were willing to bring me into this program that I work for, and I get to interact with still frequently, and they give you things to think about places that you could go. The guy the officer that is our officer in charge of our organization, he knows. So we work with different government agencies, mostly on the East Coast, and he knows the system so well, like the way things are structured, because the government bureaucracy can be maddening. Just trying to understand or even know if you wanted to do X, how do you get there? Like, how could you even make that happen? Who does it have to go through? What is the path? And he knows these things. So we've been talking a lot in our office about, it's kind of our organization's been around for about 10 years, and we fall under the Washington Counter-Drug Program. And we're coming up to a period in the next 5 years where a lot of the people that have been there since the beginning are going to be leaving. And how do we need to look for those people. Who do we pass this on to make sure they can keep things going? And so we're kind of looking at that now. And I'm kind of looking a little more deliberately now as far as mentees, because we just got a new Persian Farsi linguist, 20 years old, that just came and started working for us. And she also happens to be in my company. So one thing to understand about, I guess, my job is that I have one job during the week. That's one thing. And then my Guard job on the one weekend a month is a different job. But we happen to be in the same place for both. And I'm going to be seeing her a lot. And she's got so much potential, and she's so amazing. And so I'm looking at that. Okay, how can I help her? What are some of the roadblocks that I've encountered over the last 15 years that I can help make sure that she doesn't, I don't know, she knows how to get around it.
So I'm going to, we'll continue a little bit on my story, but I just wanted to share one thing I didn't know about you that I do now is that you have an incredible talent for languages, obviously. I love French, and the fact that, and I took 4 years of French. Now I've already told you I'm dyslexic, so English is hard for me, much less trying to learn French. This will be a little bit of a humorous story, but when I went to France, and I've been there a couple of times, but when I go to speak French to the French, they go, "Oh, madame, no, I speak Anglais. Stop now, do not massacre our beautiful language any further." So I always wanted to have your talent. It doesn't stop me from trying, but so.
It's a very humbling experience.
Yes. So when I think about mentors, just to, and many of you have probably experienced this, you have had people in your lives who may have been, in a way, kind of assigned to you as a coach mentor for one reason or another. And then you have had those who stepped into your life or you fell into theirs, who just became these incredible mentors for you. I go back again to, for me, one of my critical points in my life was high school and the fact that I was trying to do both this pathway to college because I really wanted to get a college degree, and then my backup plan, you can always be a secretary. I had an assigned counselor at school that was our, all the students had a advisor and counselor. She was a PhD. She was a psychologist. She reminded me of Margaret Mead, and Margaret Mead happens to be one of my favorite models of women and what women can do with their lives. And so I just was always admired her. So I took the college boards, not real excited, but I took my college boards and got my scores back. And it said, "Guess what, Linda? You are an average everything. You do not excel in anything. You have a 2.0, period." And I mean, all of my scoring. I was kind of going, ooh, well, okay, community college, here I come, you know, or whatever. I can still get into college, even though I am not going to be really competitive. I went in to see my advisor, who I, again, really admired, and I was, you know, thinking that she was going to, because psychology and working with people was one of the areas I was really, really interested in, and that she was really going to help me to think this through and move forward. And she brought me into her office, and I tell you this story because I also want you to share this with your kids, your grandkids, or whatever. And she sat me down, and she looked me in the eye, and looked at my test scores, and she said, "Linda, I'm sorry, but you're just not college material." Okay, so rip my heart out of my chest. You know, I was obviously, because it's still very, you know, it's still right there with me. It will be for my whole entire life. I was absolutely devastated. I still, you know, I know I walked out of her room and just, you know, got back on the bus and headed home, and I was in shock. My whole picture of who I was and where I was going to be moving towards was just shattered by this person. So this is the here comes trouble part of me, that on the way home I went, no way is this woman going to tell me what I can do and what I can't do. I'll show her. So as difficult as that was to go through and to hear and to have that heartache of you're not good enough, etc., what it did was surface that tenacity that, no, I'm not going to let anybody else ever define who I am. I know that I may not be the brightest bulb on the block, but by God, I'm willing to put the time and work in and effort and energy, and I will learn. I can learn anything if I just work hard enough. And I'm not afraid of hard work. So guess what? You know, I did. I went on to get my master's degree, etc., and got my education. My mom still would say to me when I'd go, "Oh, Mom, I've taken a new job at the Department of Ecology. I'm going to be the assistant director for the water division." And she'd look at me, and it was kind of like, I'm not sure what all that means, but, you know, if it doesn't work out, you can always be a secretary. And I said, I know, Mom, that is the great thing, the gift that you gave me, is I always have a fallback position. I always will be able to take care of myself and my family, etc. So I share that with you because when you are mentoring, and I have spent my life also trying to mentor and support and see the potential in people, I try to always look beyond the report card or whatever. It's like, interact with me. Show me who you are. What are your dreams? What are your visions? Where do you want to go in life? Here's where I want to go. Do you want to travel with me for a while? So let's come along. Let's do this journey. And that is what also people have done for me in my life. And I have been able to work in, I was trying to count up about 8 different fairly diverse fields. I've been in healthcare. I've been in mental health. I've been in the environmental regulatory. I've been in prevention. I've worked in business. I've run businesses. I've been a lobbyist. You heard me say I was an ambassador to Indonesia. For my 40th birthday for myself, I talked my husband, who was not my husband at that time, but into quitting our jobs and traveling for a year or backpacking around the world. And he went, okay. So those, part of what I always want people to look at is your potential. What is your vision? What makes you happy with yourself? And when I went, the only reunion that I've ever gone to as far as high school was my 10-year. And so everybody, and I don't know how many of you have been to reunions or ever went back or whatever, but everybody sends in the resume. and they publish it in the book, and it says, I've done this, I've done that, and I've had this many degrees. And I think education is important and very important, but I also think developing yourself and your lifelong learning, it doesn't have to be in an institution. So I wrote on I didn't send in a resume, I just wrote, I have been doing what makes me happy with myself. Linda Carrar, and I still have my family name. So, and I have to tell you, I showed up at the reunion with my first husband, and I had more attention than anybody else there. People were going, "What have you been doing that makes you happy with yourself?" So I've really tried, and with the people that I have been fortunate enough over the years to go the journey with me, either and I have had men and women who have been mentors for me, and some like Steve, who have been Mary Reveland, who worked with the state of Washington. She was the director of several agencies for many years, and I worked with her for about 15 years in different positions. Was an amazing mentor, and also had a similar personality to mine, where she was a norm buster and was the first woman in many respects in many fields. But the one thing that we just always have to caution is, don't ever let anyone else define who you are. When people give you feedback, they are telling you more about themselves in relationship to you than they are telling you about you. So understand that. Do not, don't, that was my lesson learned from my high school counselors. No, I'm not going to internalize that. You're not going to define who I am. I'll define who I am.
Well, one thing I think you've noticed is we offer a healthy dose of reality to this discussion, and I don't want to be the bubble burster of the group, but I guess I'm going to be. Being mentored and being a mentor is awesome, no doubt about it, but it is not all sunshine, roses, and unicorns, okay? It's tough. You will be, number one, it's hard work being a mentor. You don't do this thing part-time with a few phone calls and some niceties here and there. You invest time over years. Like I said, Steve invested 15 years in me, poor guy. And it takes a lot of time. And in that time, you are not, if you are being mentored by someone and that someone is in a position of authority where you work, is your boss, guess what you now are? The favorite. That's not always fun. I remember having a discussion with one of my colleagues, and he said, well, you're Steve's little princess. Yeah, and
he's still alive?
And barely. But I wanted to have an emotional reaction to that, and I didn't, which is always better for me. But you think about that, and some of you have probably been in that position. Either you've been teacher's pet, you've been so-and-so's favorite. It's an awkward position. So I made sure at a following meeting I polished off an old tiara and I wore it to the meeting. And only he knew why I was wearing it. Everybody else thought I was a little off, but I made a point. And I told him he could polish it if he wanted to. But anyway, and the reason I'm saying this, because I want you to be aware that this can happen. And when you're being mentored, yes, someone is trying to ensure that you're going to progress in your education and your profession, but it's tough. That person, they may be selecting you to invest their time, but what the other people around you who are making a judgment call don't know is that person is often harder on you than they are on everybody else. And so where someone thinks you're getting special treatment or favors, you're going, they have no idea what I've been through. And when you get, honestly, there's times when you try something, you screw up, you get torn down, and the mentor helps build you back up again. That is part of the reality of the process. So just know that that's there. And it's tough. Being on that side as the mentee, it's like, okay, I'm being given opportunities, but I'm not always learning in the easiest of ways. This is really tough. And then when you choose to mentor someone, number one, you're all busy, busy people, but you have to invest the time. And there will be times where you have to play that role of, if this person is going to advance, you have to give them a dose of reality and be tough on them sometimes. And that's difficult. None of us like to be hard on each other. And there's time to coach. There's times to be tough. You have to learn to throttle that. So I'm not saying this to scare anyone, but I think there can be this vision of mentorship is beautiful all the time, and we're going to skip along the path of, furthering our professional career. It's going to be awesome, but it's going to be hard work. There are going to be tough lessons along the way, but if you're willing to stick with it, you're going to come through the other side so much better for it. But just please know that's there. And I didn't mean to take a negative spin on this, but I think we all need to be aware of that. Oh gosh, why is this thing so hard? Why is someone being so tough on me? Because they care about you and they want you to be more awesome than you already are. So know that that's always the end goal when you're getting even some of that tough love. Just stick with it. It's going to be okay. That's the shortest answer you're going to get from me all day. I'm just saying.
So I'm going to skip ahead because we're actually already running short on time. I know. So so Natasha talked to us about what's emerging in the field of criminal justice. But I'd like to ask the panel that question of what trends do you see in your fields and in higher ed? And for women who might be in this audience, I mean, we're all professional women in different ways. But maybe some of you are thinking about, should I do a certificate? Should I finish a bachelor's degree? Should I get a master's degree? And some of that you've heard, but maybe we could just be a little bit shorter in these responses so that we can have a little bit of time for Q&A as well. So, Linda, do you want to start with this one?
I can.
Okay, 1 minute.
Yeah.
That's the job of the moderator.
A lot of people have tried. Part of what the center does is spend time looking at what the trends are in the career pathways that we're involved with. And of course, we're involved with all the areas that are related to all hazard emergency management. And so the basic issue for all of us is that you used to be able to get jobs with a high school degree. You used to be able to get some really good jobs, family wage jobs, with getting an AA degree. You now have a challenge getting jobs in management field or developing as a leader and a manager without a bachelor's degree and work experience. And that is, it's true if you want to be a carpenter. It's true if you want to be an electronics tech. All of the fields, because the competition for jobs is just growing, and it's a combination of, you really do need those more credentials, but the bottom line is, and this is why we talk about mentoring and coaching and interns and co-ops, you have got to have job experience. You can get that many ways. You can get it through volunteering, which I have done a significant amount in my life, because volunteer hours count. Similarly to, you're still employed, you just are not getting paid. And we need to get our head around that and understand that volunteering is unpaid work experience. So that's one of the things that the center really works with all of our programs and our colleges and our employers on is making sure that people are getting the education they need, helping them know what it is that is being required, because we're talking to employers, but also making sure that they have opportunities to get that work experience. How is that? Better?
And Jody, would you also address the question of why do you think there's so many more women directors in King County?
Because we're good. No. A couple of things. I think one thing I was going to mention at the end, it's embracing the uniqueness of a woman's perspective in public safety is critical. And I say that, we talk a lot about passion. I think women naturally, not that men don't have it, but we naturally bring in an ability to think critically and to look. It's okay to look at a situation with your heart as well as your mind. And that's what I love about women in the discipline. And it's okay. I've been out with flood victims, giving them a hug and bawling my eyes out, and I'm damn proud of it. I don't care. That is my perspective as a female in this business, and I'm not embarrassed of that. So I think collectively we have a unique perspective. It needs to be embraced, and it is being embraced, especially in this area. So that kind of built-in caring ability, the ability to think critically, and then plus now these advanced degrees, and you all have amazing experience that you bring to the table. So I think that has a lot to do with it. You know, back in the day of my higher education, emergency management wasn't a degree. I didn't even know it was a thing. But it is now, so the reality is when there are jobs available, there are more requirements for advanced degrees. That's the reality. I will tell you, however, that needs to be balanced with practical experience. I have had people give me resumes, they have PhDs like crazy and are smarter than I ever thought of being, but I don't hire them. I'll hire someone with an associate's degree who's got some really solid experience that I know can make a difference. So just keep that in mind, and when you say, do you pursue what makes you happy? Pursue what gives you balance. Make sure you get that experience in addition to your academic pursuits. So I think that's really important. Doing what you're doing today and making a connection. Never be afraid. I love it when people come in and want to do informational interviews. Tell me what it is you emergency managers do. My family's still clueless. They just know at one time in my past I was on TV and made my grandmother very happy. So they still don't know, but they just nod and smile. But just women bring so much to this discipline, and now it is so nice. Where I used to be the only woman in the room a lot of times, now that has turned the other direction. And I mean, look around, look at the people in here. It's tremendous. And I think we just had our association conference a couple of weeks ago, and I can't give you hard and fast numbers, but a lot of the people in the audience are women and young women, and it's exciting to see where this discipline is going to go and public safety in total.
I can keep it really short, actually, because they did a great job. In addition to the education and the experience, it's the networking. So that's what I kind of learned by watching my husband struggle through the process of trying to find work after we came off of active duty, ultimately going back to school to get a master's, and then starting up the job search process again. So just building and maintaining those networks. And part of that informational interview, that was something that I think he took away from his MBA. And ultimately, when he finally found work, it was through someone that we knew. So.
Great. So I think, where's Kelly? Do we have time for a couple questions? Right, Linda? Yeah, great. A couple questions from the audience. Yeah.
I noticed that in each of your stories, there appeared to be a different level of mentorship, from that fully embraced 15 years of someone right there to mentors from high school and others along the way. And I wondered if you could just sort of address your thoughts on that there isn't necessarily one type of mentorship that is more successful than others, because it seems like you've all had different mentoring experiences. And would you agree with that, and what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to give my opinion.
You want to?
I'm always famous for giving my opinion. I think they can work in multiple ways. I really think, though, that mentorship is often given lip service, and just because someone interacts with someone, calls them a couple times a year, oh, I'm mentoring someone. No. To me, it is that investment. It doesn't have to be 15 years. I just needed more help than most people. But it's really that time commitment of I'm really, I'm not going to dedicate a phone call here and there. I'm going to invest in this person and try to get them on a pathway. So for me, it did work best. I've had numerous others who have influenced me in a more informal way, but because of what my definition of mentorship is, I can't really call them a mentor, although they have helped guide me. To me, that mentor is really that I'm all in. And that's why I'm often cautious, because that was my experience. Now I am doing that with someone else, and I would love to have the time to mentor tons of people, but then I'd never get my daily job done. So that worked for me, so can I apply this model to someone? And we've worked together for about 6 years. She advances much quicker than I did. But kind of working her through some of that. So I guess it all depends on our own unique experience.
And I think that's something that I was hoping you would highlight, that you're all successful and you've all had different levels of mentorship experience. And I think as people consider becoming mentors, they can look at your examples and see how that plays out.
And Jamie, the one thing I'd add, and it tags off of your networking, and Jamie, knows me and probably would agree that I'm a pretty good networker. And that's one of the things that I have really done my whole life is I call it friend raising. And it was because I ran nonprofits for years, so I had to always be friend raising. And it's not fundraising, it was friend raising. But because of that, I learned the importance of networking. And in networking, one of the things that I had the opportunity to do when I worked in state government, and I worked in state government for almost 35 years, was I had worked in a variety of different agencies, and so I knew a lot of people, and I went, man, we've got all these incredibly talented women, and they're directors of agencies, et cetera, and we're not talking together. We're not coming together and sharing and finding out, and bringing in younger women and trying to help them. So a group of us actually organized, just like we're doing today, and hopefully ongoing, it was a girls' night out. And we'd take someone's home and invite as many people as we could think of, and all the different agencies that we worked with, and so we had the directors of this and the deputies of that and whatever. And we said, and we want you to bring at least one younger woman or a woman from your organization that you see potential and you want to connect her and get her known in this network. Because it's not often, it still is, it's not what you know, it's who you know that you get jobs. So if people know that you are productive and capable and competent, then you have a leg up of having an opportunity for a better position. So to this day, some of those people that were involved in that group have gone on to very high places in state and federal and local government, and have brought others along with them, and we still occasionally have a girls' night out. But it's those networks, and I can still pick up the phone whenever I need to, and if you come to me and we're working together and you're looking for a job or whatever, I probably know somebody that I can link you up with that can help you get into that pathway.
One more question. Yes.
So having come to emergency management from the criminal justice arena, I have to say that working in emergency management, I've met a lot more women that I feel comfortable with relating to, where I was pretty defensive around, being in the Army Reserves for so many years and being in the criminal justice. Women weren't always very nice to each other, and it seemed like there was a lot of competition. And so I really appreciated the atmosphere in emergency management where it's so much more like a family of people. And so I guess it's kind of a question, and maybe you've experienced this in the military, is how do we reach out and make it more comfortable for, we get the AmeriCorps Vistas that we work with and the interns that we work with. How do we make it more comfortable where they feel safe to ask us questions and be with us? And I mean, that's kind of what I was getting to, because I was thinking about that as you were talking. It's like, wow, a lot of my mentors were men. Didn't have a lot of women mentors. Even my dad, growing up, my dad was kind of my idol. And so how do we kind of break down those barriers to trusting? I guess it'd be kind of a trust thing. Did you guys experience that?
I can say in the Army I haven't really experienced much of that in the National Guard. In active duty Army, though, I would say it really wasn't women specifically. In fact, usually it was men because there are more men. Some people are they see everything as a zero-sum game and everything's a competition and somebody has to be on top. So it can create a really toxic work environment. My last active duty unit that I was in was a lot like that. And it was difficult, and it was a contributing factor to my decision to leave active duty. How do we avoid that? I mean, I think modeling, but sometimes it's hard when you're one of the only people that isn't behaving that way, and you're kind of, it can be very difficult. And at least where I'm at now, I try to contribute to a positive environment and not do the talking behind people's backs and gossiping and just I can say honestly, in my office we have maybe 6 women out of, let's say, 25 people, and we're all really tight, and we're at different ranks, but we build each other up and try to help each other out. I think if that's the prevailing climate, then that's going to be the direction that people move in. I mean, there are probably always going to be people that aren't like that. But if the majority is the other way, it's going to influence them even just to tone down the negativity.
I think the environment is kind of naturally taking care of itself as more women enter public safety disciplines. Back in the day when emergency management was getting started, it was the place where cops, firefighters, and military officers went to have their second career after they retired, because it wasn't really a thing yet. Emergency management wasn't. So the limited availability of especially higher level positions in that discipline, it's extremely competitive. If I'm the only woman in the office, it's not because there's another woman coming in, it's just because this is my job, I want to keep it, and it's just a competitive environment. Now that it's more of a balanced discipline where you have more women in the office, one thing I always do to encourage people to always, it's cliche, but there's never a dumb question, but how many women do you know? There's been articles about this recently where someone will say, well, this is a stupid question, but if I ever hear anybody say that, we immediately have words, and women do it, men typically don't. So it's kind of a crutch. So anytime, especially bringing in interns, AmeriCorps, your questions are as valid as anybody else's. You've been here 2 months, they've been here 20 years, doesn't matter. You're going to ask, and you're going to ask confidently, and what you want to know and need to know is valuable and will be valued by management. So I think just building that environment, I think creating a safe environment to screw stuff up. We have a world of perfectionists, and we're often our own worst enemies, and we can create more tension in the workplace by, I don't want to admit I don't know something, I don't want the men to see I'm weak, we create all this in our own little realities, and we need to stop. You know, I honestly had a group of people, I'll tell on the King County people, they're not here, so I'll talk about it. You know, getting ready for Cascadia Rising, big exercise. All of you are going, don't even mention it, my goodness.
They haven't recovered yet.
Yeah, you know, I had a group of, PTSD a little bit. Yeah, but I had a group of people that had got themselves so wound around the axle about performing perfectly during this exercise, and I called them together. I said, if you perform perfectly, I'm going to be highly suspicious. That's not what I want. I want things to be messed up during an exercise so we can fix it and do awesome stuff when it really happens. So it's creating that environment. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to take risks. We're going to mess stuff up, but focusing on the solution is far more important than dealing with whatever mistake it was. We're going to focus on fixing it. So I think by doing those subtle little things, you're creating that safer environment, and you're not creating tension between male, female. Just those little tips, I think, help. And I know many of you I know, and I know you're already doing that in your various programs, and it's awesome to see.
The only thing Vivian, say that there will always be that 1%.
You're right.
And so treat them like the exception and not like the rule. So let's assume that and Kelly's heard this one way too much. They are not staying up nights plotting and planning on ways to get you. They're just trying to do the best they can, even when they look like they're not. So people are basically good. But there is that 1%. And so you behave with them differently. And you don't want to have them bully you. You don't want to have, it was like my experience. You don't want to have them define you in any kind of a negative way. And you need to strategize on that. But, my hope is, and it's what my experience has been, is they're the exception. They can be just toxic as all get out. And you don't want to stay around them. You don't want to have toxic people around you. If you really have a situation where you don't have just natural mentors and natural caretakers in your environment that are supportive of who you are and what you are trying to do, then you do need to find another place to be. Because that is not good for your health, your physical or your mental health. So, but they are generally the exception. And I do think that we're changing too in the dynamics as millennials come into our midst, and they have a different perspective too in how they interact with each other, and so I'm hoping that we're learning from our histories.
So there's two things, even though we're a little over time. We have two of my colleagues are here who happen to be gentlemen. And so Dave and Brian. Yeah. And so did either of you want to say anything as the gentleman?
Representatives of the male population.
No pressure.
I told them I would do this.
I feel like
We're gonna
blended
compete.
in well.
We're going to compete.
Yeah, let us show exactly what not to do.
I've been thinking about it because Erica said she might call on us, and recognizing that there are people in this room who've accomplished far more in 10 years or 40 years than I have in my time working. I think what I say should be taken with a grain of salt, but listening to everybody, what I love is the contrast between Natasha and Linda. So I feel like Natasha has a career path where she knew what she wanted to do and pursued it, with vigor. And Linda has kind of gone all over the place, right? Doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I think, to Jamie's point on the mentor piece, when you know exactly what you want to do and what you're passionate about, and you've got that direction, sometimes it's easier to find that mentor or be that mentor to somebody else, because you're in that same trajectory for a longer period of time. You can develop those relationships, right? Whereas when you move and move and move, you don't necessarily have the time to do that kind of stuff. But what I think you should do, and it's kind of what I feel like Linda has done, is whatever you're in, pursue it to the fullest extent that you can. Find people who, can be mentors, even if it's for a short period of time, and learn from them and embrace it. Because you never know what opportunities will come up when you're in that position. It's great to have a long-term vision of where you want to go, but you may not go that direction. And by embracing where you're at, you might give yourself new opportunities that you didn't know were there. And if you're somebody like Natasha, you've got that passion, you know where you want to go, you know what you want to do. Find that mentor, find that person who can help you do it, and learn and grow with that person. And so I just think the contrast there is really interesting. And I think everybody kind of falls somewhere in that dynamic, right? From Natasha to Linda. So there's always a way to do it, a way to be successful. And I think they show that there's not one path. So.
Thank you.
Dave.
I'm not going to try to top that, but I find myself really grateful to be here. It's been nice to just kind of chime in, tap into this world, be part of Natasha's work for the day. It's amazing how far we have to travel from our own campus to learn so much about the great work of our colleagues. But I find myself really affected by Jody's comments, many of those around, having a critical thinking ability that, as you're entering this field of emergency responsiveness and how I think that's something I try to identify in anybody I'm trying to work with. And, over the past year, I've thought a lot about kind of multi-generational mentoring. By that, I mean, how do I work with someone who's new to the workforce, or somebody who's going through their first career change, or someone who's coming up on the end and looking towards retirement, but all seeking, to tap back into that ability to think critically and make strong decisions for themselves. I think you all are displaying, tactics and strategies that I've known, but that are becoming refreshed, and I'm thinking about in new ways. So thanks for having us.
So I'll end this panel with my frog voice by reading the very final words of one of my favorite writers, and her name is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She's Nigerian and lives now in Maryland, and you may know her from some of her books, Half a Yellow Sun, Americana. And she had a TED Talk in the year 2013 called We Should All Be Feminists. And if you haven't seen it, would you please write it down and watch it sometime? You can be one of the millions around the world who have watched this amazing talk, which has now also been printed. And, I think we've heard such a great repertoire of story and honesty and candor. And, it's not just women mentoring women. Natasha has a student now who she mentioned, Carlos, who is, they spend a lot of time together, and that really matters. And Carlos will always be grateful, to you in the way that you were talking about Todd. And, I know there were multiple stories. So anyway, I'm ending with this in that spirit of what does it mean to be a feminist? And this is what Adichie says at the end. She was talking about how she never looked up the word feminist. It was a word she originally didn't like at all. And then she finally did. And in the dictionary it said feminist, a person who believes in the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. And then Ngozi writes, my great-grandmother, from stories I've heard, was a feminist. She ran away, this is Nigeria, she ran away from the house of a man she did not want to marry and married a man of her choice. She refused, protested, spoke up when she felt she was being deprived of land and access just because she was female. She never knew that word feminist, but it doesn't mean she wasn't one. More of us should reclaim that word. The best feminist I know is my brother, who is also a kind, good-looking, and very masculine young man. My own definition is a feminist is a man or a woman who says, yes, there's a problem with gender as it is today, and we must fix it. We must do better. All of us, women and men, we must do better. So I'll end with that.